Alright, in this video we're checking out two new flight stacks from Diatone. This is their new Mamba series flight stacks, and they actually have been around for a while in their bind and flies, but now they are selling these components separately, so you can do your own custom builds. We have basically the power tower, the F4 power tower. This is the full size flight stack, 30x30, and then you have the Mamba F4 mini power tower. This is a 20x20 flight stack, and you can see these specs here. So on the mini, 2 to 4S, the ESCs are 20 amps, bursting 25 amps. I believe there's a current sensor on this one. Betaflight OSD. It is only an 8K gyro, MPU 6000, F4 flight controller, D-Shot 600 on the ESCs, and a 1 amp 5 volt BEC. On the full size 30x30, pretty similar specs. 8K gyro again, MPU 6000. It does come with black box data. Betaflight OSD, 1.5 amp 5 volt BEC. The input range is 3 to 6S on this stack, so obviously for the 5-inch and bigger, 4 to 6S. And the ESCs are rated 40 amps, bursting to 50 amps, and these are again BLLES, so it's going to be D-Shot 600. I'll go ahead and pull this one out to look at the bigger one first. Okay, so here's the flight stack. It already comes assembled here. Let's take a quick look at what else is in the box. This looks like a really interesting looking documentation, and we have a XD60 connector. We have a low ESR capacitor there, and it looks like a 470 microfarad. I believe that's probably a 35 volt. Yeah, it's a 470 microfarad 35 volt. Got your little bit heat shrink here and a wiring loom that goes from the flight controller to the ESC, and then we have some wire here for the XD60. It looks like, I think that is everything that's in here. Yeah, that's all that's left in there. And this is the actual documentation. It looks like very interesting. So you have some specs here: 169 amp current sensor, 36S LiPo, all the stuff that was on there before. And here it's saying it's a 5 volt 2 amp ESC, and Betaflight OSD. We have a 40 amp ESC bursting to 50 for up to 5 seconds. If you flip some of this over, so we got, I guess this is how they're doing their documentation. Very interesting. It's kind of different, very visual. So you got your, I see what's going on here. So we have your flight controller, and let's see, it's oriented just the same way. USB port pointing up, and it kind of shows you where all the stuff connects to. So saying that you got your camera connection over here, buzzer over here, receiver down here, you got your power coming in this way, and then you have your VTX wired up over here, and then your LED board wired over here. So we'll just take a look at this, and it looks like yeah, it's all labeled up here. So you have LEDs here. Looks like that's for your VTX, I think. Is that what's it looks like that's for the VTX, and probably for smart audio. And then over here you have your camera connection and your buzzer. So camera over here and buzzer, and down here is your receiver, and it's all matching up. So you can see it's all sort of labeled. Yeah, actually all the pads are labeled. There's through holes on all of these. They are a bit on the smaller side, not huge by the 30x30 standard. You have a wiring loom here that's already plugged in from the flight controller to the EC, so that might be a spare. You have your pads here for your XD60. There's the current sensor, and you have pads here for your motor wires. Looks like on the bottom and on the top. Looks like they're kind of separated by this standoff here. And then the flight controller just have these silicone grommets for vibration dampening. Let's we'll go ahead and take this apart. We can look at the underside of the board and the top of the ESC. Okay, so I'm taking this apart, and there's this little nylon spacer here that goes between the underside of the standoff, or the top of the standoff, and the underside of the ESC. You want to make sure you don't lose those. I think those are needed to keep a little extra space between the standoff and any of the components on the board. So make sure you don't lose if you take it apart. And this is a look at the underside of the flight controller. Nothing is labeled on the underside here. You just have your regulator, your OSD chip. So it looks like everything can be soldered on from the top, it would seem. Yeah, it looks pretty much looks like that. So there's really no, I don't think there's any real reason to open this up unless you absolutely want to solder wires up here from the top here. And looking at the EC, not a whole lot to look at here. Pretty boring actually. Not a whole lot going on. And you can obviously solder up your battery lead probably without taking this apart. But yeah, if you don't feel comfortable getting in there with some solder and soldering your motor wires from the top, then yeah, you're going to have to probably take it apart, do the soldering, and then mount this. If you don't want to take it apart, you could solder your motor wires from underneath and then mount it to your frame. That would probably be, I think, would be easier. The only difficulty would be the XD60 here. But in terms of all of the connections to the flight controller, everything's on the top side, so there's no reason to take it apart if you want to just solder everything to the top, so that should be just fine. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the full-size Mamba flight controller from Diatone. We'll go ahead and I'll set that to the side and we'll take a look at the micro version. Okay, the packaging is pretty similar. You have your flight stack here with your flight controller for an ESC already assembled. You have your very interesting documentation. The wiring diagram is going to be on that one. XD30 here. You get your wires for your XD30 here. Extra wiring loom for the flight controller stack here. There's one already installed. And then you have a small ESR capacitor here. This is a 470 microfarad 25 volt. And a little less because I think this is only 2 to 4S rated, not up to 6S rated. And we'll take a look at the little diagrams here. I think it's going to be needed because none of the pads are labeled here, as you can see from the top. And again, I think this is going to be the same situation where you're going to be able to solder everything from the top. I don't see anything that you can solder from underneath. And on the side here, you can see the motor wire solder pads and the XD30 pad here, the battery lead over here, all underneath. I think you could possibly solder up on top. I think that's going to be much more difficult. So again, it's probably going to be a situation where you're going to want to solder up your motor wires first and then mount it. Obviously you want to solder on your XD30, although you could probably do it from the top if you want to do that. Let's take a look at the documentation. So this has a current sensor up to 139 amps, 2 to 4S LiPo, and all of the same old stuff here for 4 or 5 mini. And 1 amp 5 volt BEC says here, Betaflight OSD, and 20 amps for the 400 AC bursting to 25 amps for up to 5 seconds. And then it has all the things labeled here as to what goes where, but I think everything should also be labeled underneath as well. So this is the for the 401 AC, which one it labels which ones are what motors are what, as well as the battery leads. And this side, yeah, so you have basically, since nothing is labeled, you got to kind of go off of the picture here. So your camera is going to be over here, and then you have your VTX, and then you have your receiver. So camera, VTX, receiver, all over here. So some of your UARTs are going to be there. Your power is going to come over here if you want to solder up an XD30 directly, but power is going to be coming from the ESC to the flight controller via this wiring loom. I think that you would only power the flight controller directly if you're using some other kind of ESC where the ESC isn't providing VBAT power to the flight controller. And then over here you have your LED on these 3 pads over here, and it looks like your 400 ESC, and then the buzzer is this little pigtail right there, and it has a little buzzer attachment onto a board with a little connector. So you guys have probably seen this board before. This is on pretty much all of their recent micros, the M2, M2.5, M3, even the 5-inch ultralight, the M515. All the things that have been using the 20x20 micro stack, it's been this particular board. So you've seen the performance of this already and flight demos. So I'm just going to put a couple links to some of the older videos that you've seen the flight footage for this one, and also for the For the 30x30 here, you've also seen this in action as well on the GT Tyrant and the GTR. So I'll put links to those videos as well if you want to see how this performs just fine. I think this is high quality stuff, and the prices are really inexpensive. I mean, it's like $45 for this for 4 ESC and flight controller, F4 flight controller, and it's like about $39.40 for the mini 20x20 flight controller. So obviously 4 ESC and flight controller, no receiver or video transmitter included in this one, but you can obviously buy a separate video transmitter board or a small micro video transmitter for your micro build, whatever. But yeah, this was yeah, pretty nice. The only thing is that you don't have the things labeled on the board itself, but you know, shouldn't be too hard to follow the diagram. You know, red. So here, for example, is the camera connection. Here you have red, black, and yellow. So that would be power, ground, and then video. And then for the video transmitter, here you have red, black, blue, and yellow. So that'll probably be power, ground. Blue is probably going to be smart audio, and then the yellow is going to be video, so video out to the video transmitter. And then over here you have, it looks like a XM Plus receiver, so you have ground, power, and then these two powers aren't used, and then the yellow one is probably S Plus. I believe one of these is going to be DSM-X, and the other one's going to be PPM. So if you're looking for further documentation on this, I think there's a more detailed diagram you can download off of the Diatone website if you're curious as to where everything is connected to. Anyway, so looking at the rest of the components on the board, you have your, I think you have a gyro here, you have your Betaflight OSD there, black box, chip data over there, looks like you have inductor there, and I think this right here is your boot button, USB port, and looks like the F4 chip is on the underside right there. So not a whole lot that you can see from the underside. It looks like it's pretty much nothing you can solder to. They've crammed everything to the top here, I guess for convenience, so you can solder everything to the top. But I already know that this board performs pretty well on all the Diatone micros that I've had in the past. And yeah, this one should be pretty good for any kind of custom build you want to put together, up to 4S, of course. Anyway, that's going to do it for this review of the two Diatone Mamba flight stacks here, the full size and the mini. I'll have video links down in the description for flight demos if you want to see flight demos of these two stacks in action. You've seen a lot of those already on my channel, but if you want to see how they perform and the Diatone builds that are all bind-in flies, I'll put those links in the description. And of course, you can just buy this very inexpensive stacks here at $45 and $40 and do your own custom builds, and you'll get similar performance, obviously, depending upon your frame and motors and etc., that kind of stuff. But you probably get pretty good performance out of these, no matter what no matter what other components you happen to use with this. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.